Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pittsburgh Providers, now available, or soon to be available, I should say, in podcast form, as well as when we do these interviews, we do them live on the Pittsburgh Providers Facebook page. So depending on how you're coming to us the first time, that's how you can connect with us in the future. And today I have the pleasure, and by the way, I'm Dr. Bulow, I think with Revive Upper Cervical. I should introduce myself. But today, it's all about you, Miss Lisa. We're sitting down with Lisa Srnka,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Of Solutions Functional Medicine Center.
You got
right?
it.
I got it. I want to make sure.
Sure.
Well, one of the things is, I mean, honestly, I'm more interested in interviewing and getting to know the specialists in and around the Pittsburgh area, right? That's why we did it. So the more complex names and the more initials after your name, the more I'm game. I mean, let's go. I don't want to talk to any scrub, no all due respect, people who wear scrubs, but I want the specialists. And you've got some extra initials, and you've got experience, and you are specialized. And so I'd love for everyone to get to know you a bit, and to lay the ground rules for yourself and anyone listening in for the first time. The whole purpose of the Pittsburgh Providers productions, we'll say, podcasts, interviews, is to introduce patients in and around the greater Pittsburgh area with specialized healthcare providers.
Right.
Now, the other additional deeper purpose behind it is to introduce providers to other providers. So we'll kind of talk cursory in the beginning about your practice and your background and all the rest. And then almost selfishly, I want to know how to recognize patients that could use your services, and even like questions to ask and or tests to run, because I think as providers we have access to our patients in a way that their plumber doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, we have medical training, we have the ability to do these things, so it kind of behooves us to do that for our patient's sake. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, that's really what we all should be striving for, is that awareness. But surface level though, for anyone listening in, please introduce yourself and your practice and what you do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Lisa Srnka. I am actually from Erie, and
Cool.
I moved to the Pittsburgh area about 2017. So I qualify for the whole Pittsburgh Provider.
That's right, you're local.
And actually, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, next year it will be 40 years of me being in healthcare.
That's amazing. You should
Yeah.
do that. That's
40
really
years, I
quite
can't believe it.
Accomplishment.
I looked at the calendar and I thought, oh no, it can't be. I became a nurse practitioner about 2016, and I have my own journey, like most people who get into these different specialties, healthcare journey. Western medicine failed me a little bit.
Personally or professionally?
Personally, had some menstrual migraines. I had thyroid issues, foggy thinking, resistant weight loss, kind of those chronic naggy things. And my primary care doctor, this is my no shit Sherlock.
Please.
This is my no shit Sherlock story. I went to my primary care doctor, good friend of mine, because he was a residency when I was a nurse in ICU. And walked in with all these symptoms, and he's like, oh my gosh, and he ran all these tests, and I came back and he said, everything's normal. And I'm like, but I feel lousy.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're stressed? And that's when I said, no shit.
We're done here.
Yeah. No kidding. And of
Yeah.
course he wrote the obligatory antidepressant, and that was it. And then I found a compounding pharmacist to help me, and then I found an acupuncturist to help me, and I changed, everything went away. It was fabulous. And so I went into become a nurse practitioner because of that experience, and I knew that Western medicine or allopathic medicine was limited.
Sure. And
there was a better way, and I found the Institute for Functional Medicine, which is the #1 international training organization and educational organization for licensed healthcare providers who want to integrate functional medicine. So what is functional medicine, right? That's what everybody's, people come in to me all the time and say, what is functional medicine? Well, functional medicine is the holistic approach to reducing or returning you to balance So we look at all body systems. We look at lifestyle medicine, food. We look at movement, stress management. We also marry this with traditional Western medicine. I do work with a lot of practitioners who are traditionally trained, but they see the benefit that food is medicine, that stress management is critical, sleep, resetting sleep is absolutely important for our immune system, for detoxification. So that is where my journey was, and I came to this area because Erie, Pennsylvania is a smaller market.
Sure.
And I fell in love, so I came
Yeah,
here
yeah.
and
Did you say
opened my own practice.
You were born and raised in Erie?
I was, yeah.
How about that? Cool. And specifically in the Pittsburgh area, you're based out of
Sewickley.
Got
Sewickley.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
I'm guessing like anyone specialized, you're probably seeing clients from all over the Greater Pittsburgh region, I would think.
I see people from probably the farthest I've seen is about 2.5 hours away.
Sure. Yeah.
They come in and see me. Well, what's great about Pennsylvania is that Pennsylvania does require that I see each person for the initial visit.
Okay.
And as long as they live within the state, I can see them telemedicine
Gotcha.
after that. But even people from outside the state do come and visit me because it's not a far drive.
Yeah.
We live close to so many other states.
And since you bring up the some of the Pennsylvania guidelines, is that within being able to practice under your
My nurse practitioner.
nurse practitioner license? And
Yeah,
that,
so in Pennsylvania, nurse practitioners need to have 2 collaborative physicians,
Mhm.
and I do. They actually are physicians that are also trained in functional medicine, so
Great.
they understand where I'm coming from, and I consult them if I need to.
Are
And
they based in this region
one
as well? or?
is based in Erie, and one is based in Pittsburgh.
Cool.
So
Yeah, that's great.
they're local, and I can grab them if I need to, and
Yeah.
it works out really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think I've heard of the institute that you went to.
IFM. Mhm.
Yeah, it is kind of a big name in the functional medicine space.
Yeah.
And you said
It's like a residency. It took me 2.5 years to go through the training.
yeah.
I took a certification exam, which was 4 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a case presentation in front of the board.
That's great.
I mean, this is big time stuff. They're
Yeah.
not goofing
Oh, yeah.
around.
No, that's good because you were saying it's for licensed healthcare providers. You know, they have
Yeah.
not anyone can just join and that sort of thing, and it takes a bit of training. So if someone's watching, how would they know? I mean, you described your background as one of just this kind of like a combination of a lot of people, I suppose, go through at a certain period of time, whether it's hormonal or functional or stress or genetics or this or that. But how would someone know that you could benefit them? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
what is their
that's
top
a really-
10 list, so to
Yeah,
speak?
that's a really good question. So, 2 different kinds of people tend to seek out functional medicine. The first type of person is one who is healthy
Mhm.
and wants to stay healthy, wants to find out.
They exist? Those type?
Yeah, they do. I do
Just-
have a couple of them actually, and they're like, I just want to see what my thermostat is here on my health. How do I maintain it? How do I prevent
Love that.
aging? You know, that everybody wants to prevent aging.
I think that, by the way, sorry to interrupt, I will say, I think that's actually how we heard about you, is we had a very proactive patient that was just on top of her health, and she had seen a couple functional people, but was not satisfied with the level of in-depth analysis.
Uh-huh.
And when she transferred over to you, she came in and just she was so thrilled.
Oh,
but
okay.
but it was that. But that's the type you're describing. Is she was just a go-getter. I don't know if she moved in from the West Coast, but you know how West Coast people seem to be
Yeah.
always like on their health and they're obsessed with
Yeah.
all that stuff. But she was a young adult. She was on her A game, and it just I think that's how we met you.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I have a lot of people that really are already know what they're doing, and they
Mhm.
just need a guide, and that's kind of what I do. I act as a guide. Now, the second type of individual who seeks me out is typically the person that I was.
Mm.
They chased all the things that they needed to chase in acute care medicine, and then someone declared them, quote, normal, and they were still standing there going, I feel lousy and I don't understand
Yeah.
why. There's got to be a reason. And the thing is that we do know our bodies better than even our healthcare providers. And when something doesn't feel right or in balance, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
And you're intuitive about that. But one of the things that I do in my practice is that in my initial foundational visit, you can tell a lot from the standard blood work that most practitioners draw. The complete blood count, the CMP, even a thyroid, and you can tell a lot from that, but you've got to be able to look at it with a functional medicine lens and training, because the parameters, the low and the high on a blood test, are often very, very wide. Mm-hmm. So even though you're in normal, but you're on the low end of normal, that means something.
Sure.
Same thing on the high end.
Yeah.
And you're not in an optimal range. And so that's one of the things that I do for a lot of my clients. They already have a lot of pieces of their puzzle. And that's why we were talking about my business logo being puzzle pieces. And that's why I do that. People come to me with just these virtual puzzle pieces, test results, diagnoses. Because in medicine, when you get a diagnosis, no one wants to look beyond that diagnosis. They're like, that's your label, and that's it.
I love it.
Occasionally, don't get me wrong, occasionally you will get a practitioner that will say, okay, that doesn't necessarily fit you, so let's look someplace else. So there are people out there and practitioners who do that, but they come and they just like throw these puzzle pieces on my desk and go, help me.
Yeah.
And I am a guide, I'm a partner, and it's nothing like you've ever experienced before in healthcare, because it is a true partnership. We work together to develop a plan so get you back in balance, but you have to have as much input in it as I do. So if you're looking for the quick fix, if you're looking for the prescription, or tell me what to do. I have people that tell me that too. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That will work to a certain extent, but you're not invested in the process, and so that's a lot what functional medicine does.
Oh, I love that, and it's so interesting and fascinating. There's so many layers there that I think overlap. But you hit on something earlier on that I just want to, like, in case someone's still hanging out with us that is new to this whole world, the significance. You said a few things that are really, really significant, and listening to your own body, I think, is so underestimated. There's layers to this we could get into, but I just wanted to tell you how real this is. We literally this morning saw a patient I haven't seen in a while. She was off on a mission trip, just came back. She lives out, I'm trying to think where Sam and his mom are from, but out Tanning area. First name only, we're not violating anything, but Sam and his mom. And she was saddened today because one of her good friends passed away. Oh. And she said she might have been in her 70s, and she said she hasn't been feeling well for about a year, and she just refused to go to the doctors. And her husband came down, and she was in her chair, and she had passed. Oh. And it was like, now that's an easy one, because she knew she wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's sort of like symptoms are, and this is a fundamental concept, but symptoms are your body's way of telling you something's going on. And to just try and control the symptoms on a surface level not only is futile, but you're actually numbing your body's way of communicating with you.
Right,
which is crazy.
It's the check engine light.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just keep turning up the radio because the knocking is happening, or cover the warning light. And I tell people that all the time. I use the lab work, that's fine. And I do advanced functional medicine testing, and we can talk about that too. But we use the lab work, but I also have to pay attention to what you're telling me and how you're feeling, because you just don't treat the labs.
Yeah.
In my practice, I use a particular tool called the multi-symptom quiz, and that's a tool from the IFM, and it's like the pain scale of all your symptoms, and you put a value number on all of your symptoms. You're asked, and you get a score every single month, and we monitor that score to make sure we're moving in the right direction, based on what we're doing for your lifestyle, what we're doing for any supplements or anything like that. Is it working? Yeah. Are we reducing things? So there's a lot of evidence based. It's not woo-woo medicine. There's a lot of evidence associated with it.
Well, when we get to our part 2 here, we're going to have to compare those, because we use the RAND 36 quality of life outcome assessment. I'm kind of curious, Because it's like all of these things, to your point, you want it to be evidence-based, repeatable, reliable, and have a gauge to know if you're winning or losing. Like, this is not just, in our world, in chiropractic, it's not just pop and pray. It's not it's not like we're adjusting the spine and saying, well, we really hope in a few weeks or a few months that you're feeling better, that you're doing, I mean, that's not what we're interested in. But to round out the conversation from a patient-centric conversation here, or perspective, you mentioned a lot about just kind of like, it's almost like the psychographic in terms of people who are willing to be and want to be part of the solution and not just a bystander to the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of a mentor of mine that said there's really two ingredients for people to change or to improve their health. One is to know that what they're doing currently is just not working. Mm-hmm. So that might be when they go to the end of that medical progression and they say, well, you have anxiety and depression. You say, well, no shit, Sherlock, sorry.
That's right.
That was her words to quote, but I'm fine with it. But I'll put that one on you this time. But yeah, but it's kind of like you have to realize and have that realization that, like, okay, if I keep going down this path, what are the odds that it's going to get better? Like, when you have that, and I'm not trying to assume everyone's situation, but another example is like, okay, I've been given that prescription for the high blood pressure, so what happens if I come off it? Or is this like an indefinite thing, like a prophylactic? Like, this is just part of my life for the rest of my life? Like, and I'm not, again, every situation is different. Sometimes we do need that, you know what I mean? But if you have otherwise good health, that's a good question to ask. Like, why is my blood pressure high? You know what I mean? If I'm 40 or 50 years old, I'm in good weight, I've got a good life, I've got whatever, and I've got high blood. That should be a question to ask. So, like, if what I'm currently doing, there's no end in sight. And then number two is we got to be willing to try something different. You know what I mean? We got to be willing to, like...
You have to have an open mind.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's an experience that not a whole lot of people have had unless you live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Where naturopathic doctors are all over the place. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I think in Canada, naturopathic doctors have large clinics, and they do a lot of family practice up there. So, but for some reason we have a problem with that here in the West, but that's okay. It's a different experience, and it's one of having an open mind. And part of what I do is education. Mm-hmm. My mother loves to tell the story that when I was a little kid, my favorite word was why.
Yeah.
Why?
I love it. Yeah.
Why? Yeah. Why? And sometimes I tend to like fire hose my clients with way too much information, and I try to pull it back because
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about what I do, and it really works, and I just want to share the message. But part of what I do is education based, because it really is. You have the power. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. You have the ruby slippers. You always had the power to get home.
Love that.
You just always had it.
That.
And you just needed somebody to show you that.
Love that.
Right? And once people figure that out, they're elated. They can't believe how something so little, I mean, just little tweaks here and there can change. So tremendous.
And any change is kind of scary. The unknown is scary, but once you own it, once you've experienced it, and like you said, once you have that health restoration, that aha, and you're the one responsible for it, not you, but the patient was able to do it with your help. Yeah. Now, I mean, come on, now you own it. It's like teaching someone how to fish instead of giving it to them. It's like the end is so much more rewarding in this kind of model.
Yeah, the moment I start working with any client, the moment I'm already planning for their graduation. How can I move them towards graduation? Put myself out of a job, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. What does graduation mean?
Graduation means that their symptom score is 20. Some people start off at like 146 or 190 or something like that. Their symptom scores come down to 20. So
0 would mean no problems at all?
No problems at all. Everybody has some thing,
sure.
Stuffy nose here and there or whatever have you. So they get down to 20. They feel very comfortable in their sleep, their diet, their exercise, and their stress management. They're maintaining it on their own with minimal input from me.
Yeah.
And we get together at our appointment and go, we don't really have anything to talk about, do we? And they're like, no. And I'm like, I think you can graduate. And they're like, no.
That's funny. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I'll give you a toolbox. We'll check in. You
Yeah.
can come back. Virtual toolbox.
Love that.
And everybody gets a plan.
That's
The
cool.
other thing that I use too in my practice that's a little bit unique is I use genomics. I use nutrigenomics. So I look at, it's not necessary to work with me, but if people have that information already, and a lot of people already do with 23andMe or Ancestry, we get the raw data and then we run it through a very specialized kind of functional medicine approach, and we can get some real insight into what does your body like genetically in order to maintain its health and its homeostasis. And I have a bunch of stories about that where we've really turned the page.
Well, before we have our patient base or people that are just getting to know you for the first time go totally glossy-eyed, because we're going to get into that. But I wanted to just close off our first half and asking you, how do people get a hold of you? Like, and we'll link this place up, but if someone's listening to the podcast and they're driving, like, how do people find you and how do they connect and what does that look like for the initial steps?
Yeah, so the easiest way to connect with me is through my website, the obligatory www, and it's solutions with an S, fmcw.com. And you can find me there, and then you can schedule a complimentary consult. That's the easiest way to talk to me, because to try and call me on the phone, it's hit or miss.
Sure.
Just go to my website, solutionsfmcw.com, and schedule a consult. It's complimentary.
Cool.
We spend about 15 minutes really talking about your concerns, your health concerns, your journey so far, and how is it that I can help. And my website has a ton of information on there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recently bought the domain pittsburghproviders.com, but we haven't gotten it up and running yet. But when we do, we'll put all that on there as well, so people can kind of filter by specialty and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If people follow, there's Pittsburgh Providers on Facebook and Instagram, and then there's Pittsburgh Patients within Facebook as a group where people can connect, and I'm sure you can be in there too, just in case they ask questions, but otherwise the website for sure. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'd really like to get into some of the specifics about what you said, so that as providers we kind of know how to enter your world or send people to your world and have a better idea clinically on kind of what you're doing. Because I mean, to me, listening, every time I talk to you, I think of one or two people. Thinking of Donna, a patient of ours, that just is off. You know what I mean? That they're not quite happy with where they're at.
Sure.
They've gotten accountability and responsibility for their spine. And by the way, I love that concept. That's in a nutshell, in the last 5 years, we've just been figuring that piece out, where we'll ask people when they come in, how do you think your alignment is? Not how you're feeling necessarily, but how do you think your alignment's doing?
Right.
And then if we can match how you think it's doing with what our objective scientific data shows, then that helps you be more accurate on your own. And then some people, when they graduate, so to speak, will either know when they need to call in, or if they're not very good at accurately predicting it, then they might just be on that maintenance, that chiropractic utopia where I just go to my chiropractor once a month to get my tune-up, Yeah. But other people, they're really good. They're really good, and they'll just say, yeah, they know, and they'll just call in, whenever they need it. But anyhow, knowing when to send people and whatnot and what to expect. So I think I've got a pretty good idea of who to look for. You know what I mean, in terms of their background and condition and kind of contentment or discontentment with their overall health status and all that. But I'm curious, you mentioned so your approach clinically is to look at, you had 4 or 5 pillars there that you rattled off.
Sleep, stress, exercise, food, and supplements.
Got it. And then I am curious, when you talk about movement or different pieces, and that might be in the exercise piece, and this is not just a selfish thing for me as a chiropractor, but legitimately when we have multiple providers in the area, who do you really synergize with well? So there are some, you might use other people's services to help your patients achieve functionality in those categories,
Yes.
Or they might be on another, offhanded category that's like just not offhanded, but just totally seemingly unrelated category, but also works well, or maybe it's just a complete blind spot to those pillars? Like, who are the folks that you tend to kind of cross paths with more often than not?
Yeah, certainly chiropractors.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that I have referred to chiropractic care more times than not.
Just because of the worldview, there's a lot of similar worldview, or
similar
the practicality and the
similar worldview, understanding the connection between different body systems.
Mm-hmm.
So Western medicine is compartmentalized.
Yeah.
You go to one person for this and one person for that. I mean, family medicine is probably the closest we get to holistic medicine in Western medicine. But yeah, chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, deep tissue massage, and then compounding pharmacies.
Yeah. Now, I would love, and maybe we could figure out a way to get this, I want to know your black book. I want to know who they are in your area, because that's the point of this, is to kind of like if you know good people, they need to be interviewed on this. So I won't necessarily force you to give shout outs now, but please encourage them, because we want to connect them.
Yeah.
And real quick, this is just a little analogy I use that you might find valuable for your folks. And just, I always tell people that diagnosing is sort of like, well, how do I start? I haven't said this analogy in a while, but like your symptoms are like like the stars in the sky, right?
Yeah.
There's tons of them, and the medical process is to try and make sense of it all. And throughout history, we've kind of grouped them together in different constellations. Like, oh, there's Orion's Belt and the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. But sometimes we need to just step back and look at the sky and see what's going on, because we get narrowed down. And it's not, the second half of that analogy falls apart because I haven't said it in a while, but what you're saying reminds me of that, and it's so important to go over, because people just...
So the other thing too, and that is a really good point, is to kind of look at it from, the big picture, and then start to fine tune in. But one of the things that I think is really beneficial, and I learned this as being a hospice nurse practitioner, believe it or not, is not my goals, their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the thing that is probably the most refreshing for most of my clients, is like, I want to know, what do you want to achieve? And then I may see something as a healthcare provider that we really need to fix that, but that's for later. Right now we're going to get to where we're helping you to feel really good, balanced, emotionally well, because so many people come in with PTSD on a variety of ways. They've gone through the traditional healthcare system. A lot of times, I hate to say it, but a lot of times they've been minimalized. They've been just made to feel like they're crazy for feeling the way they feel, because they can't find anything. And then the last 2 years of the social construct that we've had, or lack of it, and people are now trying to get back out into the world, and they're struggling with all of that. So I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but the mind is powerful, and the mind calls the shots in everything that we do.
And I noticed that too, just in the last couple of years. And we know, shout out to Monica Dunlap. We've done one of these interviews with her in the past, and she's up here in the Cranberry, but she's struggling to find more space because she can't keep up with the demand, because of how just unfortunately crazy the world's gotten in the last 3 years or so. Just not, I mean, even before COVID, you had the election cycle, and you had like all these different things, and it's real. I mean, we've seen it in patients more with anxiety and
chronic stress is probably the number one driver for most of our chronic symptoms that we have, except for a physical injury.
Now, you mentioned about, and this almost sounds like it's, again, almost doing what you're saying, is reducing things down to tests and scores, which I don't want to do, because you have a patient in front of you that is a whole person.
Right.
But I am kind of curious, from a clinical level, after you've assessed their situation, what are some of your go-to tests? I mean, first of all, you mentioned there's the functional medicine survey that's unique perhaps to that what was that called again? The
MSQ, multi-symptom questionnaire.
Because I know we've in my postgraduate work, we come across like SF scores and RAND scores that'll either be individual symptoms, headache, neck pain, back pain, all Swiss 3 scales. But then like the RAND 36 or SF36 is like a whole thing. But I was curious about that one. I might just Google it up and learn about it.
I can send you a copy of one.
Yeah, and I mean, anything for this stuff I'm fascinated by. And then, but what are some of the other ones? You mentioned, like, what's your go-to for the genetics and the...
Yeah, so when there's a therapeutic order of treatment, so that we can get long-lasting treatment. And I love the fixer-upper shows, right?
What's that
The
now?
fixer-uppers, they go in and they rehab the houses.
Cable TV, yeah.
So not that every patient is a house, but I'm just saying, you're a fixer-upper, right? You have some things that are chronically not working.
Yep.
And we have to always start at the foundation.
Yep.
And that foundation is gut.
Yeah.
So we start with advanced functional medicine testing in the stool. We use PCR testing. We were using PCR testing before it was cool. Polychain, I can't remember the whole...
Reactive protein or something like that.
Yes, reactive protein. So that's the DNA remnants of whatever you're looking for. That's basically what PCR testing is. And then we use the traditional cultures, things of that nature, microbiology and cultures, looking for fungus and bacteria.
All through the stool? Everything that you mentioned above is all stool based? All
stool. That's and there's like 3 test companies that are very well respected in the functional medicine community, and that we'll use.
Cool.
And then the second step in the therapeutic order of treatment is adrenals and thyroid. Yep. Those 2 guys hold hands. Those 2 body systems hold hands. So we have to kind of support them both, test them both. And thyroid is tested typically with the typical blood work, but a full panel of thyroid.
Yeah.
And most doctors stop at just a couple of them, but there's a full panel that should be done. And then adrenal testing is really cortisol, right? And so we do saliva testing for the cortisol and looking for the pattern and its distribution and understanding it should be following a nice circadian rhythm. When it's out of whack, why is it out of whack? And then the third step is detoxification. I call it the clogged bathroom drain. So there's a phase 1 and phase 2 of detoxification. We use a lot of nutrients like B vitamins and other like antioxidants and methylation, things like that, to make sure that we have a nice flowing bathroom drain. And so we also have to support that as well. Not a full-on detox like some people are like, oh, I just did a 28-day detox. That's not what I'm talking about.
So I'm curious what you're talking about, because when you started the first with the gut, when you talk about the detox, you're not talking about the gut directly, you're talking about on a cellular level? Or
I'm talking about a nutritional level.
Yeah.
So we use a lot of B vitamins, magnesium, a lot of those kinds of minerals and vitamins. We can test those in blood. So we have B deficiencies, we have D deficiencies, we have so many, and we replace those and make sure that we are using the right supplement nutrients to gently move you through phase 1 detoxification, because if you upregulate one over the other and the other one isn't working, then the person feels really lousy. Example, you might have a detoxification problem if you've ever taken a B vitamin and you felt horrible. That's just a sign. If I have people that come to me and say, I've taken B vitamin and I felt terrible on them. Yeah. That is a sign to me that we've got a sluggish detoxification. Yeah. Then the last thing that we treat are sex hormones. Because when we balance everything else, the sex hormones tend to balance on their own, and rarely do I have to give bioidentical hormones because they balance on their own. Everything influences everything. Yep. And once you do that, the sex hormones balance and then energy goes up.
That's cool. Yeah, there was a good friend and mentor, Dr. Robert Kessinger, and he's out in Missouri. And he teaches for one of the chiropractic kind of almost like an equivalent to a functional kind of work. And so he's really good. And his dad was a national grad from like, I don't even know when, the 70s or something. And he was a chiropractor, but he didn't really do chiropractic. He had like, urine analysis, hair analysis, blood analysis, all this stuff. So Dr. Kessinger, no, you're going to be my go-to. But before I knew you, Dr. K was my go-to. I would just call him for anything,
Yeah.
And I remember he had talked about, he looked at the major drivers of the body being like digestive and gut, endocrine, and like your basically peripheral nervous system. And that a lot of these, and he's a little bit preferential because he's also an upper cervical chiropractor, is like brainstem, how it kind of modulates and mediates a lot of these systems. But there's no question that that gut and endocrine are like big time movers.
Yes.
If nothing else, you could put digestion, endocrine, and nervous system on an equal thing, because if any one of those are off, they all rock the other one off its kilt, off its axis. And
people often ask me all the time, you're like, how do you know what to treat first? It's really hard because everything is so interconnected. But the Institute for Functional Medicine does treat, and I think it was Hippocrates said at the very beginning, all diseases begin in the gut. They all begin there.
Look to food for your medicine, or thy medicine, let food be thy medicine,
exactly.
that sort of thing.
Oh, we know that the immune system is housed in the gut. We know that serotonin is made in the gut. So there's a lot that we know that there's that brain-gut connection.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really the first place to start.
Yeah. We had T-shirts made up. We were in a parade recently, and our slogan on the back of our card is "Healing starts at the top."
Very cool.
So, because from our perspective, brainstem, but the point is, it's a good question where people get a little bit lost, and I think you can't lose if you start on either of these fundamental systems, because it's like they can take care of so many things instead of trying to micromanage everything. If you get the fundamentals right, then you don't have to micromanage as much.
Just to finish up your question about the testing.
Yeah.
So there's saliva testing we can use for adrenals. Then we can use urine metabolites for sex hormones and for cortisol. So we can do both.
Gotcha.
And then there's nutrient testing where we look at the ion panel or the organics acids, which are all of the elements that run our bodies, that make ATP, that make energy. And then the genomic part is you have, if you've done 23andMe or Ancestry.com, you actually have a raw data folder that a lot of people don't know that, but you can just request the raw data. And then there are different companies out there. I work with two. One is very education heavy based, which is really nice because I can pull out the things that I need to educate my client. And the other one is very clinician based, where I can plug in a person's, say their vitamin B12 and B6 levels, and if they have a genetic vulnerability, it tells me whether or not that genetic vulnerability is actually turned on. So do I need to address it or not? So there's two that I use right now that seem to get me really,
that's great,
really good insight.
And so it's like, from my perspective, for us as providers, we've got both, kind of like what we were talking about earlier a second ago, was like a patient presentation and kind of mentality, you know what I mean? And then coupling that with just the reality of like a lot of these tests, it's nice to know where we can send someone to have them done. Like we don't, I don't think any of us should be trying to replicate each other's services, but knowing where they can have those services done and managed well. I
love working with like-minded practitioners because I can't know everything.
Amen.
I can't know everything. I need to know when to bring someone like you in and help me move their progress forward. And then, I would hope that other practitioners, I think they do, we're in alternative healthcare, and we already have to have an open mind when we come into these types of practices. So understanding what other people can bring to the table.
Absolutely.
I seek out primary care doctors that welcome my help because they can't do it all either. And they know that, they really do know that food is medicine. They just don't know how to help the client move through it, help the patient move through it. So that's where, and I have a lifestyle coach, but she's certified by the Institute for Functional Medicine as well. So it's not just me. So if somebody needs help executing the plan, I have a trained health coach that will help you walk through it.
Yeah, that's so critical. We were just talking about this a second ago about like habits and anything new in people's lifestyle is so hard, especially the older we get set into these routines and patterns.
Yeah.
And it's so
It takes
hard.
like 66 days to change a habit. Not 28, 66.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did
That's
I did a little presentation for my clients on that, and in the research. That's the other thing I do. I do weekly videos, educational videos. We have
Awesome.
live discussions with my clients. Everybody can come on.
You got to put that in the Pittsburgh Patients group.
Okay.
Because that's a great resource. That's
Yeah,
huge.
it is a great resource. We have helped. I can't tell you
And
how
I want to
much
plug into some
we have.
of them. So.
Oh, I would love for you to be there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I ask for guest speakers to come on.
Well, I mean, just as a consumer, I want to hear it, but I'll come on. I mean, if you want to, but I wasn't.
You can listen to what we talk about.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I love all this stuff.
And believe it or not, I have as many men as I have women.
Yeah, that's great.
So it works, and everybody brings their babies and their dogs and
So
whatever.
this is something you do on site or virtual?
Right now we're doing it virtually, and it's worked out really well. I mean, living in an area like Pittsburgh, it can be difficult for people to
Sure.
come on location.
Yeah.
But we've all talked as a group, and we've decided that we're going to do one in person probably once a quarter.
Cool. Yeah.
So that we'll give plenty of time for people to adjust their schedules if they want to come in. And
How do you find it virtually? Where is it housed? Where do people
it's
watch it?
it's only for clients who work with me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Got it. That's a big
yeah.
value anyhow.
Yeah. So once I work with people in membership,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really good value
Sure.
because there's some set costs. There's no unexpected, you get a ton of resources, library resources. You get the health coach, you get supplement discounts, you get all kinds of things that
Yeah,
go with membership.
makes sense.
Or you can work with me in a group, like the group class, the stress recovery class, which is a little more affordable but not customized.
Sure.
But and then the people who are in membership, every Wednesday night we get together. We have an agenda. I mean, we work, but we laugh quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
We exchange recipes. It's amazing all the knowledge that's out there. Even my clients, because they do a lot of their own research, and they come and they
clients bring
tell
in
us.
value, man.
They
Big time.
they
Yep.
bring so many new resources that I couldn't. Again, I can't know everything, and they bring it and they share it with other people, and then people who can't come to the live discussions, it's purely voluntary. I have a members online only group,
Got it. So they can get
and
access
so
to
everybody can chat and do what they need to do, and they check in on each other. And
And that's what we were actually. I think I understood some of what you did, but I didn't know all that. So it's good to know, because when we were sending people your way, I knew enough to tell them that they could do the customized kind of one-on-one kind of stuff, and that there was some group options if they had more kind of entry-level basic kind of issues and wanted to budget it a little bit. So I was telling them that, but the membership model, and by the way, I read something recently that even family general practitioners are going more to membership based.
Yep.
Because there's just so much more access to the doctors. It's more just open and just better.
It's
but
customizable too, because you can. It's what's that Geico commercial? You only pay for what you need, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like, or is that State Farm? I don't know which one it
One
is.
of them. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you and I decide the level of intensity of treatment that you want. Whether you want an hour with me every week
Yeah.
or every month, or half an hour, or do you want? I mean, you can customize it.
Cool.
You can move up and down in severity. So as you get better and move closer to graduation, you don't have to be as intense. As you learn more,
Makes sense.
you don't need me as much. I'll cry. But, yeah, I mean, that's why I went that way, because
Cool.
it's a lot more affordable.
Yeah, I love it. I don't think. Was there anything else, Dr. Savage, hanging out with us? Did I miss anything? All right. Good deal.
Well, I
Good
have
deal.
to come and have you do an interview for me and
Oh, that'd
talk
be fun.
with my guru.
I'd love to. We could talk. I mean, my thing, and with these interviews, I don't normally take center stage because it's not what it's about necessarily, but it is a valid conversation to be had, and we'd be happy to.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said about cervical instability, about concussions, about whiplash injuries, just
Concussions. Interesting that you would
birthing
say
options.
that.
There's a lot there with
Yeah.
kids with cesareans and forceps. So like from that to the injury-based stuff, there's so much to be aware of.
Yeah. Concussions, people traditionally who have concussions often end up having small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah, for sure.
So they already have a gut issue.
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier off camera about the, and just in case someone was interested, the vagus nerve basically hitches a ride on the internal jugular vein down to the gut, but it literally goes right in front of the atlas. So these whiplash injuries twist the atlas, they throw the atlas forward, and on MRIs you can see it compressing, and that's the beginning of a dysfunctional brain-gut axis in a whiplash history.
Yeah.
Is it can start there, and then once the gut gets affected, now you got that loop, because now you're not making all the serotonin and everything else. So it's like, so I think a good case history in our world is really critical, because a lot of times when you have those physical accidents and injuries that predate some of the stuff, that's a good clue for us, for people to refer to us, because it's like that may be the first step or domino that set things off. And then on the reverse side, I think today I was a new patient with fibromyalgia. We're going through the history, and then she just alludes to the fact that when she grew up, it was a violent home. And I'm like, oh, whoa, like, let's pump the brakes, because like that was like, and that wasn't anywhere necessarily written in. Yeah. But then as she got comfortable with me, it was a violent home and blah blah blah, and you're like, oh my gosh, like no wonder, like you know, just so there are those clues
the other
that
thing
we
is
have.
that people don't realize how other past events are impacting their health today. One of the things that I do in my intake process is the timeline.
Yeah.
People have never filled anything out like this before, and they put in, I ask all these questions, it's digital, and then we put it up, and there's a timeline of like your birth to when you had your tonsillectomy to when you had this, and when did the symptoms show.
What do you make that with?
It's a special program called the Living Matrix, and it's associated with the IFM.
I've heard of that, I think.
It is a really cool,
it's brilliant. I love it.
software program, because nobody's ever seen their entire life, and then they're like, oh, that happened, then that happened. What? How, are they connected? And then we have that discussion.
We need to go back to school. I love that. I love that.
It's fun.
Oh, that's right.
You don't have enough to do. You don't have enough to do.
It's crazy, but I love that. I'd love to see that, like an example.
Oh yeah.
Of that. Like,
I'll tell you what. I'll send you a form.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you digitally.
Please,
you can fill it out, and then you can go over it.
I would love it, and I would love.
You'll be mad at me though, because it takes like 90 minutes. To fill it out. You're like, why did she make me do this?
No, that stuff's so good though. But Lisa, I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's great.
And if you've hung out with us this long, appreciate your time as well. And I am sure we would love to support you in any way, whether you're a patient looking for help, whether you're a provider looking for resources. Obviously, Lisa is a tremendous resource. And we appreciate you hanging out with us this whole time. So please reach out if you need anything at all. And any last words? Any last words for all of the above? I'll give you the last word because I talk enough. So.
Last word.
Put you on the spot.
The last word is be present. Enjoy what you have in life.
Oh, we love you. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
You're awesome. You're awesome. We'll see you guys. We'll talk to you next time. Talk to you soon. Bye now.